evening, all. Welcome to ProdEgyIAS. This is Ashutosh, and today's lecture would be the idea of ethics. As complicated as it may seem, the concept of ethics or ethics in administration is not something that may baffle you. As a society, we have been trained, we have been socialized into thinking of doing anything around us in terms of good or this is how we have been trained, I think, most of us. Most of you might be always evaluating your choices. Acha, bura, bura, sahi, galat. So you are always evaluating the choices, and somewhere the evaluation of these choices depends to a large extent on how you have perceived or understood this world around. Most of us come from a community or a background or a society or religion or caste, XYZ, history, uh, geography, right, terrain, and likewise ethnicity, linguistic community. And so we come from numerous backgrounds, and these backgrounds are virtually the building blocks of how we look into the world, how we look to the world. That is one very important aspect. So how do you make things of how do you make sense of the things around you? That to a large extent depends upon how you have been brought up and how you have somewhere acquired the values which make you or which help you make decisions or help you make interpretations or conclusions of this lecture. We'll be dealing with PYQs. I just gave you a brief understanding, very basic idea of what ethics is all about. As a subject, as you know, most of us have studied, or most of you study for UPSC, and whether the purpose is to be ethical or not. You know, recently an young IS officer was caught with 10 lakh rupees bribe. Previous to that, many of the civil services selected candidates have been found to be manipulating, misinforming the UPSC in terms of the background, in terms of disability status, in terms of the caste status, in terms of community status, and various other background info, which probably they manipulated or twisted, I would say, to get the benefit of the loopholes which are there in the process. And this, to a large extent, indicates the demise of the value, demise of the ethical, moral perception. We don't think in terms of good and bad. We think in terms of what will make us happy, what will be beneficial for us. So every human being comes with some perception. We all have our. Some may feel, okay, getting into civil service is the only target. How does it matter how I get into that, right? So you are following the teleological perspective. You are following technically the idea of consequentialism. Consequentialism, as you know, talks about purpose and means don't matter. Famous quotation of Machiavelli, no, the end justifies the means. Many of you might be not happy with this idea and they may say that no, I will have to prepare, I will work hard, I'll prepare for the exam and then I will qualify the exam on my merit, whether I qualify or not, but I will follow a meritorious path. They are following non-consequentialism, or I would use the word logy, or somewhere the Kantian philosophy of moral. Many of you might not be very aware of these terms if you have not studied, right? But I hope many of you are giving mains, so you might be aware of these terms. Now, there are various ethical theories, a description of the situations in which we are. So there is a knowledge which helps us describe the situation in which we are. And based on that description or that understanding, we are now asked or we are now supposed to make a desirable choice. Ethics. When you talk about your paper, Your paper primarily comprises of two parts. That is, one is the philosophical or normative part. The other is the pragmatic or the practical ethics. That is more like administrative ethics or probity in governance. The previous part is more the theoretical knowledge of the ethics that you need. Both are interrelated, both are reciprocal to each other. Obviously, one supplements or complements the other, and same way vice versa. So, two portions, right? They don't need very different treatment. Yes, one is more practical, one is dealing with the practical reality of administration or governing. One is dealing with the theory or the knowledge that you must have while you are practicing. So, the very purpose of this paper was that we should make students aware and conscious, which they were not able to. In fact, certain bureaucrats have already said that this paper is one of the last nails in the coffin of the UPSC, the fairness of the UPSC, right? Why? Because obviously, if you mug up ethics, if you wrote learn ethics, if you create templates for ethics, if you just develop some keywords for ethics, then definitely the purpose of the ethics paper has been defeated, because it is based on your creativity, it is based on your own perception, judgment that you would do or make while you practically empathize with the situation which you are supposed to write. That means the examiner believes somewhere that you are in the situation and you're able to decipher, understand, imbibe the. So, in simple terms, the idea was that how can an administrator, a future administrator who visualizes a situation, how can he understand this situation? Obviously, he can act in a better, right? So, that is the core idea of this paper. Internationally, also, various national events, various circumstances happen, right? Various committees were formed. You might be knowing Douglas Committee and Nolan Committee was formed. Second ARC was there, and many other things happened globally. Because of that, paper became of vital. The problem is that then people started instigating writing. Overall, later on, they started seeing a decline in the marks because the templates won't work forever. They have to be changed, right? Circumstances. So if you don't develop a sense of the paper, then probably you lose. Today we'll be talking about this. Generally, we use to, there are n number of models, right? So don't get stuck to this. I'm taking just these two models, a brief explanation of them. Then we'll take up a question. We'll try to frame an answer for you. Fine. Now let's say the peel. What is this model called? It's a quite effective model. There is a wise model, but let's not get into all that. You have to write mains, or you are understanding, you are a beginner. Fine. So you can just simplify this. What is the peel model? Now, whenever you get a question, whenever generally you get a statement, right? For example, let's take up a statement. The law floats. C of, this is a statement by Earl Warren, and this was asked in UPSC as well. Know about it? Yes. Now, many of you, can you make sense of this? The law floats in the sea of ethics. Now, many of you might have understood the ethics versus law versus morality versus this versus. Fine. So, if I say Navtesh Singh Johar case, Puttu Swami case, if I take up, let's say, and I use the word, okay, there is a law, right? The law denies the LGBT plus relationship, right? The law denies Fine. Whereas, right, morality, which is more subjective, morality, which is more subjective, is more subjective with respect to Indian society, if I say, because we are talking about the context of Indian society. And this also somewhere denies, if you know, in history, in the past, many great scientists and philosophers, they have been traumatized by these primarily relationships. They were never accepted. So in reality, the morality also denies it. Now let's talk about whether the ethics denies it or not. Fine, ethics does not. Now, which has a greater force? Which has a greater impact? This. Anyone wants to say something can say. There's no problem. Fine. Which one is more logical? Why did we say this will accept, this denies? Fine. Obviously, after the case, after Puttaswamy judgment, privacy, or testing your case, or in general, when you say, right, this law approved. Now what happens? They come in sync with each other, but they are not. So many of you, right, who try to understand any template or a concept, they must first try to understand the root logic of discussing ethics, right, may or may not tend to be legitimate or legal in the sense of being a law. But the logic is, yes, whenever a law in a modern civilized society is to be, when you talk about democracy, whenever we talk about rule of law, so whenever a law will be made in a civilized democratic society or a rule of law system will work, it will definitely look for the premises or principles. The laws cannot be arbitrary. The laws cannot be discretionary. The laws cannot be made, the laws cannot be based on a person's, cannot be on trans, cannot misuse the authority, right? It cannot provoke, cannot give excess powers to those authority. Now it has two very important parts: philosophical part, practical part. The philosophical part, exploring the idea of power, authority, monopolization, centralization of power and authority by those who are in positions where they can define what is the course of action. They are the ones who are designing our procedure of living, our process, entire process of, and whatever we do in the system. So this model, I'm giving this as an example. So let's say this model says that there is a statement. There is a statement like this, what we wrote. This statement has to be now, or we have to, like you see, a lot of statement comes in the ethics paper. So you have to explain the quotation. Obviously, you cannot exactly know context of every because it is very difficult. So when it is in inverted commas, means that exactly interpret the way it was said. Not always. You may not know all these scholars and theorists who are writing these statements. Fine. So this model says, what is the point? What is the point raised? Right? This you can specifically use for the quotations. What is the point? The point raised is simple. The point raised here is the relationship between the law. That's the point. That's the point. So every statement raises some, every statement has some basic issue or argument. So what's the point? Fine. Now, once you have understood the point, what is the point of law versus ethics, or law and or ethics and law, or ethics influencing the law, right? Law is part of the. Once you have understood the point P, fine. Come to the second. This is just ready-made logic for your mains. Then P. Once you know the point, what do? You explain. Now, explain is here. Obviously, you have to elaborate both. Explain means make sense of this point that has been written. Elaborate means obviously you have to describe or write a descriptive content, that what exactly are the different aspects of this statement which you are trying to understand, or which you are making the examiner. So you have to identify what is the sense, explain it, then try to analyze, or then try to describe the sense which you have understood, or the senses. I'm not saying only one, the senses that you understood. Okay, this means this. What is the meaning of this? What is the idea of law? What is the idea of ethics? How they are interrelated, correlated, how they are opposite to each other, right? How they influence each other. And so you have made your arguments, you have described the point in detail, and then go to the next E. The next is example. So point, explain, describe, make sense of that, right? Right sense, you'll get right marks. The examples. Obviously, now you have to support, or now you have to support or substantiate. So you can give examples like I gave you. So you can use the example like I said, okay, privacy, right? The moral or the ethical and legal. Give 2-3 examples. Don't just give one example. One example is not enough. If you give 2-3 examples, you will be able to support the ideas which you have elaborated here. So you can talk about, right, that okay, yes, we find the conflict. We find the conflict between privacy versus national. Find a conflict. We find a conflict between rights versus duties. Fine. We find a conflict between personal freedom versus collective interest. Find conflicts between, right, let us say, justice, right, versus so you find a lot of dilemmas, find a lot of problems. So these examples would be more in the nature of the range of the ideas that you have given. So it will make your ideas more concrete, right? Right? It will make your ideas more fine. That's it. So this is P double E. Now let's take, what is this L? You understood till now? It will be easy for you. What is this L? L is link this to the theory. Link it to the theory. What is the theory now? If you say, fine, we're talking about this ethics versus law. So what is the theory? There are a lot of theoretical ideas, right, which we can use to explain this or bring this. For example, when you say the theory of justice, see, every society has its own way of distributing the resource. The theory of justice says, okay, differentiate. The principle of difference, the principle of differentiation must be applied to distribute the resource. Poor must get more, richer must get less. Or opportunities should be divided in such a manner that those who need more will get more, those who need less will get less, right? So there is something positive discrimination. But this might find a conflict with law and ethics. Why? The ethical principle of meritocracy will say that no, merit is important. Whereas the principle of justice or the legal principle will say that no, the people who are vulnerable need to be protected. Right? So likewise, there are many theoretical aspects which could explore this, or the famous statement, like you said, the Kantian statement, or the Aristotle's idea of good life, eudaimonia, or Nicomachean ethics. No, must know that. Or when you talk about the Kantian idea, moral imperative. So there are a lot of theoretical arguments which can be explained. Once you have done, your answer is complete. And this is an interesting model because it gives you a very clear-cut understanding, right? How do I think about a quotation statement? If I'm able to put these things into the perspective, right, I will get good. Obviously, good marks also depends upon the content that you are. Fine. Now, let's take up. So this is the Peel model. Let's take up another model called the lens. Lens is simple, though we should bring them together. Lens is another model which says, okay, these are various perspectives: legal, economic, normative, legal, economic, normative, and society. Now, this is an interesting idea, interesting model, which is called the multi-perspective. Now, do you have to think of this? Either you use this, then also your answer will be very elaborate, right? If you talk about the legal perspective of something, so statement is given: the bureaucrats in India, right, or bureaucracy in India need to be corruption, or we need to promote citizen-centric administration to make bureaucracy less corrupt, or bureaucracy or the corruption in bureaucracy can be duly eliminated by cultural change. The administrative culture needs to be reformed. The initiatives like RTI, e-governance, they have transformed the administrative culture in India. Now, these are the statements. I'm now changing the idea. So when you have those quotations which are abstract, when you have those quotations which are more philosophical, use the Peel. When you have statements which are more factual, or when you have statements which are more practical, then you use this. Fine. So bring multiple perspectives: legal, economic, normative, societal. So here, for example, we can take this statement, right, like the question. Let me bring this idea. Question. 2024 question, fine. Let's see, it is visible to you. Now see, this question, first question, 2024, 1A question. The application of AI as a dependable source. The application of AI as a dependable source of input for administrative rational decision making is a debatable issue. Critically examine the statement from ethical point of view. What is this question? This question is a statement of reality. It's more like a factual statement that yes, AI is being used, and use of AI for a rational or better decision making in administration is debatable. Can AI be replacing idea? If I want to simplify this statement, I would say, Kabhi, the simplest idea about statement is what? That replacing humans by or human judgment being replaced by AI is debatable. See, always change your complicated question in all 2-3 words. As simple as that. Don't get into too much of language. It doesn't matter. The examiner. The examiner has given a question in a sense. Use the sense. My sense clear hai? Humans will be replaced by AI. Will it be correct thing to do? Is it something which is to be accepted as it is, or there are a lot of problems, conditions? Right? That's the question. Critically examine the statement from ethical point of view, right? So the question simply says, is replacing humans by AI, is it ethical or right? So when you use the lens model, you bring multiple perspectives, right? What is the legal perspective of, what is the basis, legal basis of, is AI or has AI been accepted as a legitimate form of technique or a tool to be used at the workplace? Is it actually doing, or it is actually replacing the existing methods and techniques of administration, right? Are we actually doing it? Is there a law for that? Is there a legal framework for that? What is the global framework for that? What has been the source for the use of the AI, right? Now, so legal, economic, what are the dimensions? What will be the compulsions? What will be the problems or issues or the costing of implementing AI, the practical problems? That is why I said the lens model helps us writing better answers in administrative part of the paper. The peel model helps us in understanding philosophical. So if we are practically trying to understand that, right? But ultimately we have to use the L, right? That is the link with theory, and S, the societal aspect. Everything eventually is going to impact the values and the culture of. And this is again in turn going to impact the laws, policies, and the governments. So the question, so we have tried to frame an answer. See, I have framed an answer which might interest you and which might help you also in understanding how to frame a good answer, right? So it's a sample answer. If you want such answers, or you want certain kinds of this kind of content, you can definitely ask the office and you'll get it. So see, what is the type of question? Broad syllabus. So theme-based question. Now ethics has a very important part known as pragmatic. Pragmatic ethics means the applied ethics part. The ethical theories, ethical principles have a lot of theoretical benefit, no doubt. But do they have any practical relevance in what is happening around us? Are they able to resolve? Are they able to help us understand? Will they be able to make sense or help us make sense of the world around us? That is the meaning of fine. So you can see it's broad question is part of what? Ethics in governance, accountability, and transparency. Part of that. Fine. So see, the ethics paper opened with a buzzword artificial. It was in news and it was necessary for them. So how we have started the idea? We started with a basic fact. That is what is the basis, the legitimate basis. Is this statement actually justified? Is this statement having some legitimate source? So what is that? Right? See, a McKinsey report suggests that AI could boost global GDP by 16%. So it has legal plus economic aspect coming together. Fine. However, concerns persist. However, concerns persist regarding what? Regarding its fairness, potential bias, and diminishing role of human. That's correct. If machines will do most of the work, what will humans do first of all, and secondly, who will be held accountable for that? Machines kill somebody, who will be held accountable for that, right? So we have started with a data. The data instantly attracts the examiner. That okay, fine, this person starts the answer on a concrete, not just a philosophical, random, abstract statement. Oh, like people do, oh, AI is becoming the reality. AI is going to replace human being. Recently, we have seen AI capturing the aspects, so many aspects of workforce or skilled manpower being replaced. These are more or less what you can say, the lofty statements without any ground. So we start with fact, which attracts the examiner, right? And obviously, when we are trying to understand AI now, we bring the normative aspect. We have used the word lens. What is normative? Normative is the principles or the theories or a theoretical explanation or analysis of this. So we then switched on. We have talked about this now. So in general, the ethical dimensions of AI in administrative decision making, right? So what are the dimensions in which the use of AI in administration could be? Is it efficient? Is it more effective? Yes. Is it faster? Yes, it is. Is it time saving, cost saving? Will it be more neutral? Yes. Will it be more biased? It will be more unbiased, right? But here's the catch. See, so we brought various dimensions to help the examiner understand that, okay, in what aspect are we studying of AI, fine? And especially with respect to human beings. So we have now divided the answer into various dimensions. What are these dimensions? Normative dimension. Normative means the theoretical objectivity versus algorithmic bias, right? John Rawls' theory of justice, obviously. See, when you use AI, will you neglect the very purpose of the administration, that is justice, inclusion, equality, serving the poor, serving the welfare, public interest? Will you neglect it? So this aspect explore. Objectivity, yes, it will be more unbiased, but will it be actually unbiased? Right? So the Apple Card, the controversy in 2019, if you know about it, right, where an Apple Card was launched, kind of loan card, a kind of finance card, and the women beneficiaries or the women customers were given lesser limit amount compared to the male. In spite of having the similar financial background, the females were treated inferior compared to the male counterparts. This was part of the biasness was inherent in the algorithm that imagine. So is AI that fair? The one who creates it, the one who develops the software, the one who develops the interface, they might put some algorithmic conditions, and these algorithmic conditions will act in the way they have been designed. So is it possible for human errors to percolate into AI? That is one aspect we explored. Fine. Then see, efficiency versus ethical responsibility, right? Max Weber, if you know. So we have used Max Weber's logic here. Any student of PubAd is bound to have a better understanding of, provided obviously he uses the idea. So you have efficiency versus ethical responsibility. Yes. Can the AI be efficient? Yes, it can be efficient. Will it take the responsibility for what has happened? No, it will not. So Max Weber talks about rationality in administration, bureaucracy, and he supported the idea of procedures, rules, techniques, and many other things. But ultimately, his purpose was what? To make administration more accountable, more answerable to the people, not less answerable. So anything which goes on to reduce the accountability while being efficient, anything which is going to reduce the human sensitivity while being efficient may not be totally. Again, a drawback. So we explored this then. There's another scholar we have used, Habermas. Fine. Let me just erase this. Another aspect we have chosen. See, we are using the theoretical relationship. Transparency versus black box. So, most of the AI decisions lack transparency. Are you involved in that decision? Do you participate in that decision? Don't. Right? Habermas is a scholar, very popular for communication and critical models. Right? He has given, Habermas is a scholar who talks about, he has given something called communication paradigm. Now he says the bureaucracy or most of the administrative systems fail because they become too secretive. They become too opaque. They are not visible to the people. People do not participate, communicate. People don't know what has happened. Another scholar is Easton. David Easton is another scholar. He gives the idea of black box in public policy making. That policy making is black box, not visible to anyone. You have a problem, the policymakers make the policy, gives the policy, you see the policy result, you see the policy outcome. Sarkar ne aisa kiya. You don't get to know ye hua kaise, how did it happen. You just see the problem and then you see some solution, but you don't understand the process. That is called black. So AI creates a kind of black box, invisible to the normal. And like we, as you know, data privacy, misuse of data, there are a lot of issues which obviously AI cannot handle. AI cannot be fair. Fine, but no doubt. But because we have to highlight critical perspective, we have used it. Right? Accountability and moral agency. Right? Obviously, we have discussed recently, we have just discussed just now that once you are given autonomy, if you know, we evaluate the role of moral agents. Oh, who are moral agents? Anyone? Can you just let me know? Who is a moral agent or moral agency? Moral agents are the human beings whose actions we evaluate. We do not evaluate the action of the tree, dog, animal, right, or someone. We evaluate the actions of the human beings because they are logical, rational, thinking beings. They have control over their locomotor abilities. They have control over their instinct. So we evaluate them. You've seen the movie, right? Oh my God, what was the movie? So in that, see, there was something called the act of God. The act of God is supported by insurance agents, insurance companies. The act of God or disasters. Can someone be held liable for that? Destruction of people. Recently, today itself, there is a crash, aeroplane crash in Ahmedabad. Just today, 1 hour back. 242 passengers stranded or killed. Who is to be held accountable? Will the plane, so the pilot says, or the agency says that, okay, there was a technical fault. The airline says there was a technical fault. Who is supposed to evaluate technical fault because of whom? It was said the pilot did not follow the ATC guidelines. Pilot called the Mayday. Nobody was listening. Air traffic controller not listening. So when machines will work, the biggest problem would be that because we are giving moral agency, machines, right? So can they be held responsible? No, they will. So humans are moral agents, not the machine. When machines are not moral agents, how can they be given autonomy to act independently of the? Fine. So we are using this idea, right? Kant's idea of moral agency. So human reason guides the decision, right? Whereas AI does not have that human reason. It may have some programmed or programmed characteristics, algorithms, and it may evolve over a period of time, no doubt. There is generative AI, there are other natural NLP, natural language processing, or machine language, and likewise. But the idea is that can they be accepted to be capable of acting in? Then human-centered governance or depersonalization. There is another concept, Hannah Arendt, right, who talks about the condition, the human plight. Obvious. So citizens will become what? If AI driven governance takes place, what will citizens become? They will merely become the beneficiaries. They will become the recipients. They will not be the actors. They will be the one who are just waiting for the benefits. They will be isolated from this process. Simple term used by Marx. Isolated from this process, Marx uses the concept of alienation. Fine? Alienation. Peter Brunner is another scholar who talks about how technocracy, technology can minimize the human interface, the human sensitivity, and ultimately the humans will become depressed, demoralized. So, excess use of technology, isolation of human beings, lack of participation of human beings, and eventually the lack of self-worth part of human. So, we brought 4-5 perspectives, which we have used the word as N in the lens model, that is normative. That means we are theoretically or using the theoretical principles of ethics, we are trying to convey or evaluate our argument. Fine. Then privacy and data, we have talked about it. So ultimately we have summarized this. Then what did we do? Right? We said, okay, fine. Let's not totally criticize it. Let's take some positive action. Critical analysis would say, okay, fine, there are issues, there are problems, there are debates around it, but at the same time, it must be having some utility. That is why we are debating about it, right? If we had discarded it outrightly, obviously we wouldn't be debating about it. Why are we conscious about its use? Because we think that it can be used. So logic. So when we have discussed the various dimensions, then we take up a chart or a table. What we have done, we have taken this chart or a table so that it gives a better idea. What we have written here, simply. The idea is simple. What we have written, right? How the use, prudent use of AI. Now that balances our argument, because the earlier aspect was more critical. Now we want to balance it. So we have also brought the perspective why we have made the table. Save time. Don't write too much. Make it sensible. Make it relevant. Focus on microcosm model. What is microcosm model? In few lines, you can say a lot of things. But you don't have vocabulary, you don't have theory, you don't have knowledge, don't have good reading habits. So eventually you'll be lack of words, at lack of words. So even if I give you a template of peel or lens, you do not have enough content to use. Fine? That is the biggest issue with ethics. And that is where the scoring reduces. Because most of you are stranded, you have very limited vocabulary and you keep using it. Transparency, ethical, moral, justice, equality, rule of law. You don't have vocabulary beyond this. So in most of the answers, whether it is case study, right, you keep using the similar type of ideas, stakeholders perspective, right, authority centric perspective, institutions perspective. You do not have a very what you can say, the broad sense of the question. If you have it, your vocabulary will surely enhance and you will be able to use a lot of knowledge that you have utilized in your general studies paper, you have gained in your GS paper or options like PubMed or sociology, and likewise, and you can utilize it there. So alienation is a concept of Marx, like we have talked about, right? Same way. So we can bring multiple disciplines knowledge here. So we have made a table and we have also created a positive reference that yes, the use of AI is going to balance the drawbacks that human system, errors, corruption, delay, misuse, tendency of manipulation. Many of these things can be risked. And once we are through with this arguments, counter argument, and then we focus on a way forward. What way forward should be? Human in the loop approach. What is human in the loop approach? If you know, the humans have to be very much part of the AI. It is not about AI versus human, about AI with a more optimistic approach, more balanced. Transparency in algorithms. You know, the chat GPT, the open chat GPT group, one of the key coders, Indian, I think, born. He was found dead in his apartment because he was a kind of whistleblower. So he was trying to highlight the corruption or the misuse of data in his own company, right? So that may also be created, transparency for algorithms, for whatever codes are being developed, whatever information is being used, whatever data is being mined. For that, we need an oversight or regulation. Find fairness of audits. Yes, if there are mistakes, there are discrepancies, there are misuses, there must be a fair audit. These auditors must be paneled or listed or duly authorized by the government. And even citizens can become part of that. AI ethics framework. Yes, there must be clear-cut ethical guidelines, code of ethics, or legal framework for the use of AI. In fact, fair use of. These are some futuristic recommendations and not based on our whims and fancies. They have been the talk of the town. They have been the part of the debate which has been conducted many places. Recently, if you know, Justice Chandrachud used AI, right, uh, uh, in general public, right, just to make sure that what is the utility and probably the benefit of AI. But even the same courts, judicial system, when they give judgments, they don't give AI judgments. They give judgments as per the human. The laws, procedures are again interpreted with human judges. You cannot have an AI judge. So any technology, any means, or sorry, any interface, any innovation is a means to an end. It cannot be the end in it. So that summarizes a good answer. Now, like in the beginning, I told you, we gave you some diagrams, simple diagrams. So if you want to make your answer more interesting, right, kindly use diagram. Because if you write too much, eventually you may keep writing something not politically correct. You might end up writing some wrong terminologies. Avoid writing too much also. You can use diagrams. You can use tables. You can use statistics, data. You can use basic and constitutional values. These are some must do for ethics. So constitutional philosophy, constitutional values in general, then your various principles which are there, whether you use Kant, you use Gandhi, you use Vivekananda, Amartya Sen, Ambedkar, use many of them, majority of them, Aristotle, Plato, many of them may not be that relevant unless they are asked directly. There are a lot of contemporary scholars who are more relevant to. So if you have understood this logic, that lens model to be used where these statements or the questions seem to be more practical, more administrative type. Field model to be where the questions be more abstract or the quotation type of definition type of. If we use these two models, it will be easy for us. What we have to do for case study, how do we have to deal with case study, that you keep watching. We'll talk about, we'll take up to 5-10 case studies, right? We'll compare these case studies, that how the format of writing an answer changes the moment the nature of case changes. There cannot be just one standard template writing the, right? That is why your marks are coming in reverse order. The people who are writing more and they feel they are writing very good content, fine, they are getting 100, below 100, 105, 107. There are people who are writing generalized answers, they are getting 120. Why? Because there is a difference. Innovation versus mechanization. Again, a big ethic. Think about it. Improve your learning process. You will see wonderful results in this. Follow the herd, follow the given or the stereotypes, and you will see that eventually you are still fighting with the basic understanding. Fine. So this is all for today. We'll take up the case studies in another lecture, right, within few days, so that you are able to at least have a different sense of understanding of how to write effective answers. And this paper is good enough to score very well, especially if you are a PubAt student or a sociology student or a philosophy student. Definitely you have much better edge compared to others. If you are not using that edge, the question mark lies on you and you have to find out exactly what is to be. In case you have any doubts and queries, do consult us, talk to us, send us your queries, we'll try to address them. Fine. I don't need to say, obviously free of charge. Right? See you then. All the best to you. Thank you. Right? See you again.